The accusation hit Molly Duncan like a bullet to the chest on that scorching August afternoon in 1882, standing in the dusty main room of the Silver Creek Ranch while rancher Howard Blackwell's weathered finger pointed straight at her heart. She had worked as the ranch's bookkeeper for 18 months, trusted with every ledger and every coin, and now $3,000 in gold coins had vanished from the safe, and somehow every suspicious eye in Prescott, Arizona territory had turned toward the quiet 22-year-old woman who kept the books. "I never touched that gold," Molly said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Mr. Blackwell, you know me. I have documented every transaction, every payment, every deposit since the day you hired me." Howard Blackwell was a mountain of a man, 60 years old with silver hair and a face carved by decades under the desert sun. His ranch stretched across 5,000 acres of Arizona grassland, and he employed 30 men who worked the cattle and horses that made him one of the wealthiest ranchers in the territory. His jaw was set hard as granite as he stared at her. "The safe was locked. Only 3 people have the combination: me, my foreman, Dutch Carter, and you. I did not take my own gold. Dutch has been with me for 20 years. That leaves you, Miss Duncan." Molly felt the walls closing in. The ranch house suddenly felt suffocating, the August heat pressing down through the wooden ceiling. "I swear on my father's grave, I did not take that gold. Someone else must have learned the combination. Perhaps someone watched one of us open the safe." Dutch Carter stood near the window, a tall man in his 40s with a handlebar mustache and cold eyes that never seemed to blink. "Pretty convenient that you're the newest employee, the one we know the least about. Pretty convenient that the gold disappeared right after you worked late in this office 3 nights ago." She had worked late. She had been alone in the office, updating the quarterly accounts, making sure every number aligned perfectly. But she had left that safe untouched, had not even approached it that night. "I was working on the ledgers. The safe was already locked when I arrived, and it was still locked when I left." "Nobody else was here," Dutch said flatly. "Everyone saw you leave near midnight. Next morning, the gold was gone." Molly looked desperately at Mr. Blackwell. "Please, let me help investigate. Let me go through the books again. There must be some explanation." "You are dismissed from your position, Miss Duncan," Blackwell said, and the words felt like a death sentence. "I am trying to decide whether to bring the territorial marshal into this matter. You should pray that gold turns up before I make that decision." She walked out of that ranch house with her head high, but her heart was shattered. By the time she reached the small boarding house in Prescott where she rented a room, the story had already spread through town like wildfire across dry brush. Mrs. Henderson, her landlady, met her at the door with tight lips and folded arms. "I will need you to settle your account and find other accommodations, Miss Duncan," the older woman said. "I cannot have a thief living under my roof." "I am not a thief," Molly said, but the words felt hollow. Who would believe her? She had $40 to her name, the last of her wages from the ranch. Her parents were both dead, lost to fever 5 years earlier in Kansas. She had one brother somewhere in California, but she had not heard from him in 3 years. She was alone in Arizona territory with nowhere to turn and a reputation that would make it impossible to find honest work anywhere in the region. That evening, she sat in the cheapest hotel room she could find, a dingy space above the Lucky Dollar saloon that smelled of whiskey and cigarette smoke. She counted her money again and realized she had perhaps 2 weeks before she would be destitute. The injustice of it burned in her chest. She had worked so hard to build a respectable life after her parents died, had taught herself bookkeeping and mathematics, had proven herself capable and trustworthy. Now all of that had been stripped away by someone else's crime. She did not know that her salvation was already riding toward Prescott on a dusty road, leading a string of horses he had just purchased in Phoenix. Cole Garrett was 26 years old, lean and strong from years of cowboy work, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and gray eyes that noticed everything. He had worked for the Silver Creek Ranch 2 years earlier, saving every dollar until he could afford to start his own horse breeding operation. He had just spent the last of his savings on 4 prime mares and a young stallion, betting his entire future on his ability to build something from nothing. He was coming back to Prescott to use the corrals at Silver Creek while he searched for land of his own, counting on the good relationship he had built with Howard Blackwell. When he rode into town that evening, the sun was setting in streaks of orange and purple across the Arizona sky. He stopped at the general store to pick up supplies, and that was where he heard the story. "Shame about that Duncan girl," the store owner said as he wrapped Cole's purchases in brown paper. "Seemed like such a nice young lady. Goes to show you cannot trust anyone these days." Cole frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You have not heard? Howard Blackwell's bookkeeper stole $3,000 in gold from his safe? Happened just a few days ago. The whole town is talking about it." Cole's frown deepened. "Molly Duncan? The quiet girl with the brown hair who always had her nose in the ledgers? That is the one. Blackwell fired her, and she's probably going to hang when the marshal gets evidence together." Cole left the store with his mind churning. He had met Molly Duncan during his time at the ranch, though only briefly. She had just started working there near the end of his tenure. He remembered a serious young woman who seemed entirely focused on doing her job well, who had caught an accounting error that saved the ranch $200, who had seemed about as likely to steal as a priest was likely to rob a bank. Something about the story did not sit right with him. He rode out to Silver Creek Ranch as the stars were beginning to appear overhead. The ranch house glowed with lamplight, and he found Howard Blackwell in his office going over papers with a heavy scowl on his face. "Cole Garrett," Blackwell said, standing to shake his hand. "Heard you were coming back to town. Bought yourself some horses, did you?" "I did, sir. Was hoping I might use your corrals for a few weeks while I get myself established." Of course. You were always a good worker. We will put those horses in the east pasture." Blackwell gestured to a chair. "Sit down. Let me get you a whiskey." As they sat together, Cole carefully brought up the subject. "I heard about your missing gold. That is a hard loss." Blackwell's face darkened. $3,000, gone like smoke, and I trusted that girl with everything." "You are certain it was Molly Duncan?" "Who else could it have been? She had the combination. She was here alone the night before we discovered the theft." Cole took a slow sip of whiskey, choosing his words carefully. "I only met her a few times, but she did not strike me as the stealing type. Actually caught that error in your cattle sale accounts, as I recall. That is what made it so easy for her to gain my trust," Blackwell said bitterly. "She was smart, thorough, seemed completely dedicated to her work. Obviously, it was all an act to get close to the gold." "What does Dutch think about all this?" Blackwell shrugged. "Dutch says she is guilty as sin. Says he never trusted her completely, thought she was too quiet, too secretive." Something cold settled in Cole's stomach. He had worked alongside Dutch Carter for nearly a year, and he had never quite liked the man. Dutch was efficient and competent, but there was something hard and calculating in his eyes. Cole had once seen him beat a horse unnecessarily, and when Cole had objected, Dutch had smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes and said that sometimes creatures needed to be reminded who was in control. "Has anyone searched for the gold, Sigincha?" Cole asked. "Maybe it is still hidden somewhere on the property." "Dutch and I went through the office top to bottom, nothing. If she took it, she moved it off the ranch quickly." Cole nodded slowly, an idea forming in his mind. "With your permission, Mr. Blackwell, I would like to do some investigating of my own. I have got time while I'm getting my horses settled, and I'm good at noticing things. Maybe a fresh set of eyes will turn something up." Blackwell looked surprised. "You think you can find my gold?" "I can try. And if Molly Duncan really did steal it, I will help you prove it. But if she did not, then the real thief is still here somewhere, and you deserve to know the truth." The older man studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, Cole. You have my permission to look around, talk to whoever you need to talk to. If you find that gold, there is a reward in it for you." Cole rode back into Prescott with determination settling in his bones. His first stop was the boarding house where he had heard Molly Duncan was staying. He learned from a man sweeping the boardwalk that she had been turned out and was now at the hotel above the Lucky Dollar. He found her room and knocked on the door. When it opened, he saw a young woman who looked like she had not slept in days. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her hazel eyes were shadowed with exhaustion and worry. She was pretty in an understated way, with delicate features and a determined set to her jaw that suggested she was holding herself together through sheer willpower. "Miss Duncan, my name is Cole Garrett. I used to work at Silver Creek Ranch. May I speak with you for a moment?" Suspicion and fear flickered across her face. "If you are here to threaten me or accuse me of something, I have heard enough. I am here because I do not think you stole that gold, and I want to help prove it." She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she stepped back and let him into the small room. There was one chair, so he gestured for her to take it while he leaned against the wall. "Why would you help me?" she asked quietly. "You do not even know me." "I knew you well enough to know you caught accounting errors instead of hiding them. A real thief would not have done that. And I have got good instincts about people. You do not feel like a criminal to me." For the first time since the accusation, Molly felt a flicker of hope. "I did not take that gold, Mr. Garrett. I swear it on everything I hold sacred. Call me Cole, and I believe you. Now I need you to tell me everything about that night, every detail you can remember." She took a deep breath and walked him through it. She had arrived at the ranch office around 6 in the evening. Mr. Blackwell had already gone home to the main house. Dutch Carter had been in the bunkhouse with the other men. She had worked on the quarterly accounts, reconciling the cattle sales with the expenses, making sure everything balanced perfectly. She had not gone near the safe. Around midnight, she had extinguished the lamps and locked the office door behind her, using the key Mr. Blackwell had given her. "Who else has a key to the office?" Cole asked. "Mr. Blackwell, Dutch Carter, and the housekeeper, Mrs. Gomez, because she cleans in there every morning." "Mrs. Gomez been with the ranch long?" 15 years, from what I understand. She is absolutely loyal to Mr. Blackwell." Cole nodded, his mind working. "What about the safe combination? Could anyone have seen you or Mr. Blackwell or Dutch opening it?" "It is possible," Molly admitted. "The office has windows that face the yard. If someone was watching at the right moment, they might have been able to see the dial." "Have there been any strangers around the ranch recently? New workers, visitors? Anyone who might have had opportunity?" Molly thought hard. "Not really. The crew has been stable for months. There was a horse trader who came through about a week before the theft, but he was only there for a few hours and someone was with him the entire time." Cole filed that information away. "What about Dutch Carter? You said he accused you pretty quickly." Molly hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I never quite trusted Mr. Carter, if I am being honest. He always seemed to be watching me. A few times I caught him standing in the doorway of the office, just staring. When I would ask if he needed something, he would make some excuse and leave. It made me uncomfortable, but I never said anything because he is Mr. Blackwell's most trusted employee." That cold feeling intensified in Cole's stomach. "Did Dutch ever ask you about the safe? About the combination or how the security worked?" "Once," she said slowly, remembering. "About 2 months ago, he made some comment about how the safe was old, and maybe Mr. Blackwell should upgrade to something more secure. He asked if I ever worried about someone breaking into it. I said I trusted that Mr. Blackwell had good security measures in place." He smiled and changed the subject. Cole pushed away from the wall, his mind made up. "I am going to find that gold, Miss Duncan, and when I do, your name will be cleared." "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, standing to face him. "You do not owe me anything." He looked at her, at the courage in her eyes despite everything she was facing, and felt something shift in his chest. "Because it is the right thing to do, and because I cannot stand seeing an innocent person destroyed by lies." Over the next 3 days, Cole became a fixture at Silver Creek Ranch. He told Blackwell he was settling his horses and doing some work around the property, but every spare moment was spent investigating. He talked to the ranch hands, asking casual questions about that night, about who had been where, about what they might have seen or heard. He examined the office from every angle, studying the windows, the door, the safe itself. On the second day, he noticed something interesting. The safe sat against the interior wall of the office, positioned so that someone opening it would have their back to the window. But there was a mirror on the opposite wall, a decorative piece that Mrs. Gomez used to check her appearance when she cleaned. If someone stood at just the right angle outside the window, they could potentially see the reflection of the safe dial in that mirror. He tested it that evening after the ranch had settled down for the night. Standing outside the window in the shadows, he could just barely make out the reflection of the safe dial in the mirror when the lamps were lit inside. It would be difficult, would require patience and good timing, but it was possible. The next day, he talked to Mrs. Gomez, the housekeeper. She was a plump woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a maternal manner. "That poor girl," Mrs. Gomez said, shaking her head as they talked in the kitchen. "I do not believe she took that gold. She was always so respectful, so hard-working." "Did you notice anything unusual that night or the next morning?" Cole asked. Mrs. Gomez frowned thoughtfully. "The morning we discovered the gold missing, when I went to clean the office, the window was unlatched. I remember because it is my job to make sure everything is locked up tight at night. I specifically remember latching that window the evening before because there had been a breeze and it kept swinging open." Cole's pulse quickened. "You are sure?" "Absolutely certain. I mentioned it to Mr. Blackwell, but with all the upset about the gold, I do not think he paid much attention." "Did you tell Dutch Carter about the window?" "I might have mentioned it to him. He was there when we opened the safe and found the gold gone." Cole thanked her and went back to examining the office. If someone had unlatched the window from outside and climbed in during the night after Molly left, they could have opened the safe if they knew the combination, taken the gold, and escaped the same way. But that still meant someone had learned the combination somehow. He spent the afternoon casually observing Dutch Carter. The foreman was supervising some work on the south fence line, barking orders at the ranch hands. Cole joined the work crew, making himself useful while keeping his eyes and ears open. "Dutch sure has been in a good mood lately," one of the cowboys muttered to another. "Usually he is meaner than a rattlesnake, but last few days he has been almost pleasant." Cole glanced over at Dutch, who was indeed smiling more than usual. For a man whose boss had just lost $3,000 and whose ranch was dealing with a theft scandal, Dutch seemed remarkably unburdened. That evening, Cole rode into town to check on Molly. He found her in the same small room, looking even more worn down. She had been trying to find work, she told him, but no one in Prescott would hire her. The stigma of the accusation had marked her completely. "I am running out of money," she admitted quietly. "I have maybe enough for another week, and then I do not know what I will do." Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out $40, nearly half of what he had left. "Take this." She shook her head firmly. "I cannot take your money, Mr. Garrett." "Cole," he corrected, "and yes, you can. You need it more than I do right now." "But your horses, your plans. We'll still be there after we clear your name. Please, Miss Duncan, let me help." She looked at the money, then at his face, and he saw her eyes grow bright with tears. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He did not have a good answer, or rather, he had an answer he was not quite ready to examine too closely. The truth was that every time he saw her, every time he talked to her, he felt drawn to her strength and her dignity in the face of terrible injustice. She could have run, could have fled the territory and tried to start over somewhere else. Instead, she was staying, facing the accusations head-on, fighting for her innocence. There was steel in her spine, and he found himself admiring it more each day. "Because you deserve kindness," he said simply. "Now please, take the money." She accepted it with trembling hands. "Thank you, Cole. I will pay you back as soon as I can." "I know you will." That night, lying in his bedroll in the ranch bunkhouse, Cole formed a plan. If Dutch had stolen the gold, he must have hidden it somewhere. $3,000 in gold coins would be heavy, bulky, difficult to conceal. Dutch would not have taken it far, would have wanted to keep it close where he could check on it, but he also would have needed to hide it somewhere it would not be accidentally discovered. The next morning, Cole began a systematic search of the ranch. He started with the areas around the office, looking for any sign of recently disturbed earth or unusual hiding places. He checked the barn, the equipment sheds, the storage buildings. He was careful to appear casual to make it look like he was simply working on various maintenance tasks. On the second day of his search, he struck gold, quite literally. He was checking the old smokehouse behind the main kitchen, a stone building that had not been used in years since Mrs. Gomez preferred to buy smoked meat from town. The door was secured with a rusty padlock, but Cole noticed fresh scratches on the metal, as if someone had recently opened it. He found a crowbar and pried the lock open. Inside, the smokehouse was dark and smelled of old wood and long-dead fires. He lit a lantern and began searching. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just empty hooks hanging from the ceiling and a few old barrels in the corner. Then he noticed that one of the barrels did not quite sit flush with the floor. He moved the barrel aside and found a loose stone in the floor beneath it. His heart hammering, he pried up the stone and discovered a hollow space underneath. Inside that space, wrapped in an old burlap sack, were dozens of gold coins. Cole sat back on his heels, a grim smile crossing his face. He had found the rancher's missing gold. But finding it was only half the battle. He needed to prove who had hidden it here, and he needed to do it in a way that would absolutely clear Molly's name. He carefully replaced everything exactly as he had found it, leaving no sign that he had discovered the hiding place. Then he went to find Howard Blackwell. He found the rancher in the main house, working on correspondence. "Mr. Blackwell, I need to talk to you privately." Something in Cole's voice made the older man pay attention. He dismissed his house staff and closed the door. "What is it, Cole?" "I found your gold." Blackwell stood up so fast his chair fell over backward. "What? Where?" "Hidden in the old smokehouse, but before I show you, I need you to trust me on something. We need to catch the real thief in the act of checking on his stolen goods. If we just retrieve the gold now, he could claim that someone else hid it there and we will never be able to prove who the real thief was." "Tell me who it is," Blackwell demanded. "Tell me right now." Cole took a breath. "I believe it is Dutch Carter." The color drained from Blackwell's face. "Dutch? That is impossible. He has been with me for 20 years. Which gave him plenty of time to learn the safe combination by watching you through the office window. I found a spot where someone could stand outside and see the reflection of the safe dial in the mirror on your wall. The morning the theft was discovered, Mrs. Gomez found the office window unlatched, even though she specifically remembers latching it the night before. Someone came in through that window after Molly left, someone who knew the combination and knew exactly when to strike. Blackwell sank back into his chair, looking like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. "Why would Dutch steal from me? I have paid him well, treated him fairly." Some people are never satisfied with what they have, and 3,000 in gold is a powerful temptation. If you are wrong about this, Cole, I am not wrong, but we need to prove it beyond any doubt. Here is what I propose. Cole laid out his plan. They would spread word around the ranch that they had received a tip about possible evidence in the old smokehouse and would be searching it thoroughly the next morning at dawn. If Dutch was the thief, he would try to move the gold tonight, knowing it was about to be discovered. They would be waiting for him. Blackwell struggled with the idea but finally agreed. That afternoon, he made sure to mention loudly in front of Dutch and several ranch hands that someone had suggested the thief might have hidden evidence in one of the old buildings, and he intended to search every structure on the property, starting with the smokehouse at first light. Cole watched Dutch's face when Blackwell made the announcement. For just a moment, he saw panic flicker in the foreman's eyes before his expression settled back into its usual hard mask. That night, Cole and Blackwell concealed themselves in the shadows near the smokehouse. They waited as the hours crawled past, as the ranch settled into sleep, as the moon rose high and bright over the Arizona desert. Cole was beginning to wonder if his plan had failed when he heard the soft crunch of boots on gravel. A dark figure approached the smokehouse, glancing around nervously before producing a key that fit the new lock Dutch must have installed after breaking the old one. The figure slipped inside, and moments later, lamplight glowed through the cracks in the door. Cole and Blackwell moved silently to the door. Cole counted to 10, giving Dutch time to fully incriminate himself, then threw the door open. Dutch Carter was kneeling on the floor, the loose stone pulled up, the burlap sack of gold coins in his hands. He looked up with an expression of pure terror as Blackwell stepped into the smokehouse with a lantern held high. "Dutch," Blackwell said, and his voice was full of pain and betrayal. "How could you?" For a moment, Dutch seemed to consider fighting or running. Then his shoulders sagged and something ugly came over his face. "How could I? I have worked for you for 20 years, Howard, 20 years of breaking my back while you got richer, and I stayed nothing but a hired hand. This gold should have been mine. I earned it with my sweat and blood." "I paid you a fair wage," Blackwell said quietly, "and I trusted you with everything." "Your fair wage would never have been enough for me to buy my own place, my own future. I was going to be an employee my whole life while you sat in your big house counting your money. When that girl came along, I saw my opportunity. I watched you open that safe for months until I memorized the combination. I waited for a night when she worked late, then came back after she left and took what I deserved. Framing her was just a convenient way to cover my tracks." Cole felt rage boiling in his chest. "You were going to let an innocent woman hang for your crime." Dutch laughed bitterly. "She was nobody. A girl with no family, no connections. Who was going to miss her?" "I would have," Cole said, and he realized as he spoke the words just how true they were. They took Dutch into town that night, waking the territorial deputy and placing the foreman under arrest. The gold was returned to Blackwell's safe, and Cole insisted that they immediately inform Molly that she had been cleared of all charges. They found her still awake in her rented room, sitting by the window in the darkness. When Blackwell told her the truth, told her that Dutch had confessed and she was completely exonerated, she simply sat there in stunned silence for a long moment. Then she started crying, not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from her very soul. Cole found himself crossing the room, pulling her into his arms, holding her while she released all the fear and anguish and injustice of the past week. She clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world, and he held her close and whispered that everything would be all right now. Blackwell cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Miss Duncan, I owe you an apology. I judged you unfairly, and I allowed my trust in Dutch to blind me to the truth. I would like you to return to your position at the ranch with a substantial raise in wages, and my personal guarantee that your reputation will be fully restored." Molly pulled back from Cole, wiping her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. I accept your apology, and I will return to work." The next morning, the whole town was buzzing with the news. Dutch Carter, the respected foreman of Silver Creek Ranch, had been the real thief all along, and Molly Duncan was completely innocent. The landlady who had evicted her came to apologize profusely. The shopkeepers who had refused her service suddenly welcomed her with open arms. Molly accepted their apologies with grace, though Cole could see the hurt in her eyes at how quickly they had turned on her. She moved back into the boarding house and returned to her work at the ranch, but something had changed between her and Cole. They found themselves seeking each other out, finding excuses to talk, lingering in conversations that stretched long past necessity. Cole began teaching her about horses in the evenings after her bookkeeping work was done. They would stand by the corral where his 4 mares and young stallion grazed, and he would explain bloodlines and conformation, what made a good horse and how to spot potential in a young animal. She was a quick learner, asking intelligent questions, and he found himself looking forward to these evening sessions more than anything else in his day. One evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Molly turned to him with serious eyes. "I never properly thanked you, Cole. You saved my life. If you had not found that gold, if you had not proven Dutch was the thief, I would have been ruined. I might have hanged." "You do not need to thank me," he said softly. "I just did what was right." "No," she said firmly. "You did more than that. You believed in me when no one else did. You spent your time and your money helping a woman you barely knew. You gave me hope when I had none left." She paused, then added quietly, "You gave me something I have not had since my parents died. You made me feel like I mattered to someone." Cole turned to face her fully, his heart pounding. The feelings he had been trying to ignore for days suddenly demanded recognition. "You do matter, Molly. You matter a great deal. To me." She looked up at him, her hazel eyes reflecting the dying light. "Cole, He reached out and gently cupped her cheek. "I know I have no right to say this. I know I'm just a cowboy trying to start a horse breeding business with barely $2 to my name. But these past few days, getting to know you, watching your strength and your courage, I have realized something. I am falling in love with you, Molly Duncan." Her breath caught. "You barely know me. I know everything that matters. I know you are honest and brave. I know you fight for what is right even when the whole world is against you. I know you have a quick mind and a kind heart. I know that when I hold you in my arms, it feels like coming home." Tears welled in her eyes again, but these were different tears. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was just gratitude, but it is more than that. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel like maybe I could have a future again." He leaned down and kissed her then, soft and gentle, a promise more than a passion. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, and for a moment the whole world narrowed down to just the two of them and the perfect rightness of being together. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I do not have much to offer you yet," Cole admitted. "Just 4 horses and a dream, but I swear I will work every day to build something we can be proud of." "I do not need much," Molly said. "Just honesty and loyalty and love, and I think you have plenty of all 3. Over the following months, their relationship deepened and grew. Cole found a piece of land for sale about 10 miles from Silver Creek Ranch, 100 acres with good water and grazing. It was not much, but it was a start. The problem was the price, $1,500, which might as well have been $15 million for a man in his position. Molly came to him one evening with a proposition. "I have been saving money from my wages since I started working again. I have $400 put aside, and Mr. Blackwell has offered me a bonus for my work this quarter, another $200. I want to invest it in your land." Cole shook his head immediately. "I cannot take your money, Molly. It is not about taking. It is about investing in our future together." She took his hands in hers. "I believe in you, Cole. I believe in what you are building, and I want to be part of it. Not as someone you are trying to support or protect, but as your partner, your equal." He looked at her determined face and felt his heart swell. "You are sure about this? Sure about me, about us?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Cole went to Howard Blackwell and explained his situation. To his surprise, the older rancher listened carefully, then made an offer. "I will loan you the remaining money you need for that land, at a fair interest rate. You can pay me back from your horse sales over the next 5 years. Consider it my way of making amends for doubting Miss Duncan, and my investment in a young man I believe in." With Blackwell's loan and Molly's investment, Cole purchased the land in December of 1882. They named it the Garrett Horse Ranch, even though they were not yet married. Cole insisted that Molly's name be on the deed as a co-owner, a shocking decision in an era when women rarely held property rights. "If we are partners, we are true partners," he told her. "That means your name goes on everything." They were married on a crisp January morning in 1883 in a simple ceremony at the church in Prescott. Howard Blackwell gave Molly away, a gesture that meant the world to her. Mrs. Gomez wept happy tears through the entire service. Even the territorial deputy who had arrested Dutch Carter attended, tipping his hat to the bride and groom. Their wedding night was spent in the small cabin Cole had built on their property, a simple 2-room structure that would serve as their home while they built their business. They made love tenderly, learning each other's bodies, whispering promises and dreams in the darkness. Molly had worried she might feel afraid or uncertain, but with Cole, everything felt natural and right. He was gentle and patient, making sure she felt cherished and safe, and when they finally came together fully, it felt like the completion of something that had begun the moment he had knocked on her hotel room door and offered to help clear her name. The next years were hard work but filled with joy. They rose before dawn every day to care for their horses, to mend fences, to break and train the young colts that resulted from their careful breeding program. Molly continued doing bookkeeping for other ranches and businesses, her reputation now restored and enhanced by the story of her false accusation and vindication. Her income helped support them while Cole's horse business slowly grew. By 1885, the Garrett Horse Ranch had a reputation for producing some of the finest working horses in Arizona Territory. Cowboys came from as far as New Mexico to purchase their animals. Cole and Molly worked side by side every day, equal partners in every sense. They argued sometimes, both having strong opinions and fierce pride, but they always talked through their disagreements and never let anger fester. In the spring of 1886, Molly discovered she was pregnant. Cole's reaction was pure joy, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around despite her laughing protests. They spent the months of her pregnancy preparing, adding a room to their cabin for the nursery, purchasing a cradle from the carpenter in town, dreaming about the future. Their son was born in December of 1886, a healthy baby with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination. They named him Thomas, after Molly's father. Cole held his son with trembling hands and tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by love and the responsibility of raising another human being. "We are going to give him everything," he promised Molly as she lay exhausted in their bed. "Every opportunity, every advantage we can provide." "We will give him love," Molly said softly. "That is what matters most. Love and honesty and the example of two parents who work hard and treat people fairly." Thomas grew into a bright, curious toddler who loved the horses as much as his parents did. By the time he was 2, he could sit in a saddle with his father, giggling with delight as they walked slowly around the corral. Molly would watch them together and feel a contentment so deep it almost frightened her, thinking how close she had come to losing everything. In 1889, they paid off their loan to Howard Blackwell a full year early. The old rancher had become like family to them, often stopping by their ranch to check on their progress and play with young Thomas. Dutch Carter, meanwhile, had been sentenced to 10 years in the territorial prison for theft. Molly had attended his sentencing, wanting to face the man who had nearly destroyed her life. Dutch had looked at her with hatred in his eyes, but she had simply stared back calmly until he looked away. "I forgive you," she had said quietly, shocking everyone in the courtroom. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I will not let anger poison the good life I have built." Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, was born in 1890. She had her mother's hazel eyes and her father's dark hair, and she was fearless from birth, demanding attention and affection with a strong will that made both parents laugh. Thomas adored his little sister, helping to care for her with the seriousness of a much older child. By 1892, the Garrett Horse Ranch had expanded to 300 acres. They employed 4 cowboys full-time and had built a proper ranch house, a beautiful 2-story structure with a wide porch where they would sit in the evenings and watch the sunset. The original cabin had been converted into the ranch office where Molly kept the books and managed the business side of their operation. One evening, sitting on that porch with their children playing in the yard and the sound of horses nickering in the distance, Cole turned to Molly and took her hand. "Do you remember that day I knocked on your hotel room door, when you looked like the whole world had given up on you?" "I remember everything about that day," Molly said softly. "I remember thinking you were probably just another person coming to judge me, and then realizing you were offering me hope. I told you I was falling in love with you, that you mattered to me. But I do not think I really understood then how much you would come to mean. You are not just my wife, Molly. You are my partner, my best friend, the person who makes everything in my life better and brighter. Every success we have had, we have achieved together. Every joy we have experienced, we have shared equally." She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their children play. "You gave me back my life when everyone else wanted to take it away. You believed in me when belief seemed impossible. And then you gave me something even more precious. You gave me a family, a home, a future filled with love." "We gave each other those things," Cole corrected gently. "I was just a cowboy with a handful of horses and a dream. You took that dream and helped me build it into something real. Your business sense, your intelligence, your determination, they have been just as important to our success as my knowledge of horses." Thomas came running up to the porch, his young face flushed with excitement. "Papa, one of the mares is having her foal. Come quick!" Cole and Molly both jumped up, following their son to the barn. They had been waiting for this foal for weeks, knowing it was likely to be one of the finest horses they had ever bred, a combination of their best mare and a championship stallion they had purchased the previous year. They arrived at the barn to find their ranch hands already there, giving the mare space and assistance as needed. The birth went smoothly, and within an hour a long-legged colt was struggling to its feet, all knobby knees and determination. Molly stood with Cole's arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the new life they had helped bring into the world. "He is going to be magnificent," Cole murmured. "Just like his owners," one of the cowboys said with a grin, and the others laughed in agreement. That night, after the children were asleep and the new colt was resting comfortably with his mother, Cole and Molly sat together in their bedroom. 10 years had passed since that terrible week when she had been accused of theft, when her whole world had fallen apart. Now they had built something beautiful from those ashes, a life neither of them could have imagined. "Do you ever think about Dutch Carter?" Cole asked quietly. "About what drove him to do what he did?" "Sometimes," Molly admitted. "I think he was eaten alive by envy and bitterness. He spent so much time looking at what other people had that he could not appreciate what he had himself. Mr. Blackwell treated him fairly, paid him well, trusted him completely. But it was not enough because Dutch had convinced himself he deserved more, deserved to be an owner rather than an employee. He could have worked and saved and eventually bought his own place like we did," Cole said. "It would have taken time, but it was possible." "Some people want shortcuts," Molly said. "They want success and wealth handed to them without the work and sacrifice. Dutch thought stealing the gold and framing me was the easy path. He did not understand that easy paths usually lead to destruction." Cole pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I am grateful every day that I did not take the easy path either. I could have believed the accusations against you like everyone else did. I could have walked away and focused on my own business, but something told me to dig deeper, to fight for the truth. And that choice led me to you. That choice led us both to this," Molly said, gesturing at their beautiful home, at the life they had built, to love and partnership and a future brighter than I ever dreamed possible. They made love that night with the tenderness and passion of two people who had built something real and lasting together, who had weathered storms and emerged stronger, who knew the value of what they had because they had fought for it. The years continued to unfold in a pattern of hard work and deep satisfaction. Thomas grew into a strong, responsible young man who took his role as the eldest seriously, helping with the ranch work and showing a natural talent for training horses. Sarah was spirited and clever, keeping everyone on their toes with her quick wit and adventurous nature. In 1895, Molly gave birth to another son, whom they named Daniel. He was a quiet, thoughtful child who loved books as much as horses, and who would sit with his mother in the ranch office watching her work on the accounts and asking endless questions about numbers and mathematics. By 1900, the Garrett Horse Ranch was one of the most successful operations in Arizona, now a state rather than a territory. They employed 12 full-time workers and sold horses throughout the Southwest. Thomas, now 14, was already being courted by other ranchers who hoped to arrange marriages with their daughters. Sarah, at 10, declared she would never marry because she wanted to run her own ranch someday, which made both her parents hide their smiles. Daniel, at 5, was learning his letters and could already do simple sums in his head. Howard Blackwell passed away peacefully in 1901 at the age of 79. He left the Silver Creek Ranch to a nephew, but he also left a generous bequest to Cole and Molly in his will, along with a letter that thanked them for their friendship and praised them for proving that success built on honesty and hard work was more valuable than anything taken through deception. Mrs. Gomez, now retired, came to live in a cottage on the Garrett property, where she spent her days knitting and telling stories to the children. She was a beloved figure, and her presence was a constant reminder of the connections forged during those difficult days back in 1882. Dutch Carter was released from prison in 1899 after serving his full sentence. Cole heard through mutual acquaintances that the former foreman had left Arizona entirely, heading to California to try to start over. Cole felt a mixture of pity and relief, hoping the man had learned something from his imprisonment, glad he would never have to encounter him again. One evening in 1905, Cole and Molly sat on their porch as they had so many times over the years. They were both in their late 40s now, their hair showing threads of silver, their faces marked by years of sun and wind and laughter. Their children were grown or growing, the ranch was thriving, and they had built a legacy that would last generations. "We did it," Molly said softly, taking Cole's hand. "We built something real from nothing but determination and love." "We did," Cole agreed. "And every day I'm grateful for that moment when I decided to knock on your door, to believe in you when no one else would." "I think about that sometimes," Molly said thoughtfully. "About how one moment, one choice can change everything. If you had not investigated, if you had not found that gold, my life would have taken such a different path. I might have hanged or fled the territory. I certainly would never have known this kind of happiness." "Fate brought us together," Cole said. "Or maybe it was just luck. Or maybe it was something deeper, some connection that was meant to be. Whatever it was, I thank God for it every single day." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the Arizona sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. In the distance, they could hear Thomas working with a young horse, his patient voice carrying across the evening air. Sarah was in the house helping with dinner, her laughter mixing with Daniel's as they argued about something inconsequential. It was the sound of a family, a home, a life fully lived. Fully. "Do you know what I think about most when I remember those days?" Molly asked. "It is not the fear or the injustice, though those things were real and terrible. It is the moment when you told me you believed in me. That moment when I realized I was not alone anymore, that someone was willing to fight for me. That was when everything changed. That was when I started to hope again." Cole brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You were never meant to be alone, Molly. You were meant to be loved, cherished, respected for the remarkable woman you are. I am just grateful I was the one who got to do those things." "We saved each other," she said firmly. "You saved me from false accusations and destroyed reputation. I saved you from a lonely life of just work and ambition without love or family to give it meaning. We made each other whole." As the stars began to appear overhead and the desert air cooled, they remained on the porch. Two people who had found each other in the midst of crisis and built a lifetime of love from that foundation. The Wild West was changing around them, becoming more civilized and settled, but their story remained a testament to the enduring power of faith, justice, and love. Years later, when their grandchildren would ask them to tell the story of how they met, Cole and Molly would sit together and recount those dramatic days in 1882. They would tell about the missing gold and the false accusations, about the investigation and the discovery in the smokehouse, about the moment when truth triumphed over lies. But what they emphasized most was the moment they fell in love, the choice to believe in each other, the decision to build a life together based on partnership and equality and unwavering trust. The Garrett Horse Ranch continued for generations, passed down to Thomas and eventually to his children and grandchildren. The story of its founding became family legend, a reminder that sometimes the darkest moments could lead to the brightest futures, that justice was worth fighting for, and that true love could emerge from even the most difficult circumstances. Cole and Molly lived long lives together, never spending more than a day apart, their love deepening and growing with each passing year. When Cole finally passed away in 1925 at the age of 69, Molly held his hand and thanked him one last time for believing in her innocence all those years ago, for giving her a life beyond her wildest dreams. She followed him 3 years later, and they were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch with a simple marker that read, Cole and Molly Garrett, partners in life and love. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would visit that grave for decades to come, bringing flowers and sharing stories, keeping alive the memory of two people who had proven that courage, integrity, and love could overcome any obstacle, and that sometimes the most beautiful stories began in the most unlikely ways.